doing this for a long time now. Help them start to rebuild it.
Sabine, I've been kind of anticipating this episode for a while. We've known people that kind of associated us together, connected us together. And there's a lot of things in your story that I came across that made me know that you needed to be on the Broken Instruments podcast. I'm very thankful that you're here.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
So.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. If you know, or if anybody's seen the podcast, a lot of it is about hard lives. And I think you've had one of those lives. You've had it, you currently have it. And I think we want to package this life that we have now based on our past, and our past, like even especially the hard times, shape who we are.
Right.
And even hearing just parts of your story, pieces of your story, it inspired me a lot, and it made me reflect on my life a lot. Mm-hmm. On what exactly I need to do in my life, and most especially how I should interact with the world, because I think, you know, and we'll get to it, of course. You've dealt with a lot of adversity. Physically as well, more so emotionally. And I want to welcome you to the Broken Instruments podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Sabine Shoepke. Does this sound right?
Yes, perfect. You got it right.
Awesome. I hope so.
Yes.
A little bit about yourself, Sabine. I know everybody sees your Instagram, and they see this powerhouse of fierce lioness energy. I don't think anybody starts at that point, like being that. And I think you said in one of your past interviews was, you had a boring life. It's hard for me to believe that. I don't think anybody has a boring life, right? But definitely there was a beginning before this is who you are now.
Right.
A little bit about your past before any big shifts in your life to end up where you are now. Who was Sabine before all those types of things started happening in your life?
Well, I feel like there were multiple very different Sabines before that. I was originally born in Germany. I lived there with my parents and two brothers until I was 16. And then there was a few things going on that made me go to Canada by myself at 16 and go to school there. And my parents back then said, okay, we'll support you for a year overseas, but then you have to come back. And I didn't want to go back. So I found ways to support myself over there through scholarships. And then pretty soon, a couple years later, I started my own company. So at a very young age, I found a way to support myself. It was an interesting, that in itself, like when you're really young, I was like 19 at the time. I had zero money, and I had this dream of a company that I wanted to have. I went to Toronto, and I was basically homeless in Toronto, and I set up this company back then. And within 3 months, I got it to work, wow. And I got my own place, and it all went uphill from there. So that was one Sabine back then. Yeah. And then I ended up going to university. I supported myself, and I sponsored my brothers to come to Canada. And so that was one part. I graduated. I went to a Harvard affiliate in Canada. I got my MBA, and I graduated and then realized, oh my God, I don't want to get a job. I have the perfect job. I make more money than anybody else.
Yeah.
I'm free to do what I love to do. I got to travel, and I ended up coming down to California to open up a subsidiary of my Canadian company, and that's really what brought me to California.
What company was this?
It was an exporting company.
Exporting?
Mm-hmm. I saw opportunity for goods that people wanted in Europe that were very expensive and that were way cheaper in North America, so I started that, and I filled entire aircrafts with merchandise that, were cheaper retail here than they were wholesale in Europe.
Oh wow, yeah.
So it was fun. It was a fun project.
Is that still functioning right now? Or?
No, because
okay.
It's not legal anymore.
Oh,
the laws changed. The laws changed. If you're not an official, like a license holder of a brand, you're not allowed to import it into Europe. So they shut that down.
Yeah.
Yes, they caught me.
Yeah. But hey,
It was fun while it
You were
lasted.
hustling from the beginning, yeah.
Yes. So I started hustling really young.
Well, and that's one Sabine,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And I believe that through phases of life and chapters in life,
Yes.
it shapes who you are, and
Yeah.
you can't hide who you are.
No.
So, you said you had siblings. How many siblings do you have?
2. I have 2 brothers.
2 brothers. Older?
Younger.
Oh, they're younger.
Uh-huh.
So you're the oldest sister.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So you make your way to California.
Yes, and then
yeah,
continued doing what I was doing for a little while until it wasn't possible anymore. And then I became a mom. Like, I had twins, and that was kind of the boring life. Like, it wasn't boring, but it was so normal, which was not like me, like who I really am.
Yeah.
I mean, I love my kids, and I love that whole phase. They're now, this month they're going to be 18.
Wow.
So I've kind of just closed that chapter. But all of a sudden, I was kind of put in this box of being a mom, and I was with somebody who didn't really support me going out and doing my own thing, and who was kind of like, okay, now we're going to do this, now we're going to do that, and it wasn't really relevant what I wanted to do, So it kind of clipped my wings a little bit, and I lost for temporarily a little bit myself in that. And until that relationship was over, and I just couldn't take that anymore. I felt so claustrophobic, and I knew at some point, and I think that was like the big turning point for me, was where I asked myself and I said, "Oh my God, this is it." Like, that was the big question. And only later I found out, some therapist said to me, he said, usually when people ask themselves, "Is this it? Like, this is going to be it for the rest of my life." They go either way, and for me it was like, no, it's not. I gotta change this.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you felt you weren't happy in this life. Right?
Yeah, I wasn't.
And not to say that it devalues your kids or family
not
or
at
anything,
all.
right? Of
Not at
course. But there was something more that you needed, I think, in life.
And once I made that change, I mean, it was hard on the kids, and of course you have all this guilt and all of that, but now when I talk to my kids now, they're like, "Oh my God, Mom, we're so proud of you. We're so proud of you to follow your calling, to follow your heart." And I think even though it was hard for them at the time, I think at the bottom line is they got a lot more out of that, like what they've learned over the last few years from that, and looking at me, how I changed and how I pushed forward, they got a lot more out of that than if I would have stayed. So bottom line, I think everybody won.
Yeah. And I think people don't give enough value to you being the example to your kids.
Right.
And I know, at certain ages in high school or whatever, like you have kids that either like they resent their parents or something. And then you become an adult, and then you realize who your parents are and what they've done and the decisions they've made.
Right.
And now your kids see you as an inspiration because they're in that point of life where they're responsible for themselves now.
Right.
Powerful.
And I see it like with my daughter. She just got accepted to a university in Switzerland, and she's like, "Mom, I'm gonna do what you did." She's gonna go over there. She's gonna go to school over there, and I'm so proud of her. I'm so proud of her. Even last year during the pandemic, she was like, I'm not learning anything online. She took off for 6 months. She went to Switzerland by herself at 16.
That's exactly what you did.
Yeah, I'm like, and here you go.
There you go.
I am so proud of you. People were like, "Aren't you upset?" And I'm like, no. I mean, I'm going to miss her like crazy because her and I are very close. But no, I am super proud of her. It like propelled her forward, in being independent, and the courage it takes, to do this on your own. It's amazing.
At 16 years old, that takes a lot of courage. And I mean, she comes from you, and you had that in the past. So let's, you as a mom, what led you to be Sabine now, the powerful, bodybuilding, the tough lion that's in front of me right now? Like, from that boring life, I wouldn't even call it boring life.
It's the wrong word. But
yeah, definitely.
Very normal.
I know what you mean, though. Yeah.
Yes.
The mundane life that we're taught is normal in life, right? Like that. This is what you do. You become parents, and then you let your kids be the dream.
Right.
And we don't live our dream anymore, which is not necessarily the truth.
I mean, we think it's our dream. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted kids so badly. It
Yeah.
took me 3 years to have kids. I had
Wow.
all kinds of issues, and I wanted these kids so badly. And I did. I
Yeah.
really did. But then it's like with so many things, when you're like, oh, this is my dream, this is what I want. And then you get it, and you're like, and now what?
It's not, yeah, true.
What's next?
Yeah,
you know?
True.
Yeah.
True. And even more, it doesn't discredit anything you did, because now you look at your kids as
Oh
in
my
pride,
God.
with pride.
Yes.
Because they're
it's-
like you.
It's awesome. Yeah.
You have this nonprofit called Shiny Little Blessings. What's the story behind that?
So that's a business I started almost 13 years ago, actually. There also, I was not in a good place. We had a house fire, lost everything, and started from scratch. Like,
What?
we're
Okay.
completely bankrupt at that point. And I was like, what am I going to do now, like, work-wise, you know? And I started, we were going through, like, lawsuits a lot with the fire, and it was a very difficult time. And I started to make these pieces of jewelry for myself, and I would stamp them with words that were meaningful to me and inspire me. And my kids at the time were, I think, like 4.5, 5 years old, and I kept looking at them and thinking, A, anything is possible. I was never supposed to have these kids, so I'm going to get myself out of this situation. And B, God, even if you have nothing else, but you have 2 healthy kids, focus on that. And everything else is going to be okay. And so I had words that inspired me, and I would make different pendants, and depending on the day and depending where I was emotionally, I would wear different pendants on that necklace. And then, like, friends, neighbors would notice and say, where do you get that? You know? And it just started. And I, like, one necklace at a time, and I would hear stories from people about things they were going through, and they would either give me a word or a phrase, and I would stamp it for them, or they would say, this is the story, do something about, like, make something. And I had a spare bedroom, and I started like that. And somebody said to me back then, it's like, oh, put it on Etsy. Etsy, the marketplace for handcrafted items. And I looked at this, and I was like, oh, it's going to cost me 20 cents to list that. Okay, I can do that. And I put it on there, and I mean, I look at these listings now, these old listings from 13 years ago, and I'm like, I can't believe anybody bought anything. This is so bad. The photography is so bad. Like, the presentation is horrible. But we went from that, you know, in a spare bedroom by myself, to today, 13 years later, we are Shiny Little Blessings is number 42 in the world out of 3.8 million vendors.
Oh my God, yeah. Wow.
And it is everything I wanted it to be, because at the time, you know, I had to make a decision, okay, am I going to be a mom, or am I going to get a full-time job and never see my kids grow up? And I said, okay, I'm going to create a workplace for women where family comes first.
Wow.
So, and that's what it's become. I have a bunch of women working for me. They all have family. Every position is double stacked, so they each have their back. So if one has to run out because somebody's sick, the other one jumps in. And it's a beautiful community of women working together, having each other's back. And it's everything and more that I wanted it to be. And then I got to a certain point where I was like, oh my God, I am so blessed. Everything worked out. Holy crap. I can support my kids. I can, you know, have the life that I wanted. And I was looking for nonprofits to support. And because of my history of, like, being homeless in Toronto for a while, you know, I was like, I want to support homeless children. So I searched high and low for an organization that appealed to me, and there's one called Family Promise. It's a national organization, and they help children and their families transition out of homelessness. Because I said, I don't want to just hand out sandwiches. I want to help families to get back on their feet, and that's what they do. They have a holistic approach where church members take these families in, they figure out why they're homeless, what do they need to become self-sufficient again, and then they do all of that until they're ready to be on their own again.
Wow.
So that's the organization I work with, and
That's beautiful.
so it's been a dream come true.
And like you said, people don't just need, like, a sandwich to be fed one day.
Right.
There's a saying that you teach someone how to fish,
Right.
rather than giving them one fish.
Yeah.
So that they're fed for one day and then that's it. You get people on their feet till they're functioning on their own.
Right.
And that's those things in our world, in our society, are overlooked for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
People don't talk about those non-profitable organizations that are specifically to help others that are in need.
Right.
And that's a powerful thing. I mean, I've checked Shiny Little Blessings, and just the message is beautiful. And
Thank
sometimes
you.
just one word
Yes.
can change everything.
Oh, yeah.
For somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, was there one word that spoke to you when you started this that was like, that lit you up more than any other word that you
Yes.
came across? What was it?
It's joy.
Joy.
Yeah.
3-letter word.
Even now it can
Wow.
make me cry.
Wow.
Because I think of my daughter and I look at her, like, I think back then how difficult the time was, and I would look at her and just her bright light and the joy she had, and she still has, and that's all you need to see. Like, but you gotta see it. But once you see it, it's like, okay, that fire is on. I'm gonna be able to do anything I need to do
Yeah.
to move forward.
Wow.
Yeah.
And something as simple as joy, and people they use joy in a way, or they have this connotation of joy as like, rainbows and stuff.
Right.
But you're pointing out that joy lit you up like a fire.
Yeah.
And there is some assertiveness and aggressiveness when it comes to joy, because you want to bring joy to family. You want to bring
Right.
joy to your daughter. You speaking about your kids, it kind of made me think about the story you were telling about when you were assaulted, and it was your daughter that was
Right.
the one that really got you to say something.
Right.
I mean, it's difficult to for us as individuals to be like, all right, I'm going to do things on my own. This is what I need to do. I can take it. I'm fine. Like, nothing's wrong. I'm going to move forward. I know it's very sensitive. I really don't want to push it if you don't feel comfortable with details, of course. But you experienced some violence
Yeah.
in your past. And I mean, if you can speak to that, I think it would help a lot of people.
So I was attacked. Strangled, beaten, and then almost raped, but I got away. And I had terrible PTSD after that. It was in my own home. I was asleep. So it does a number on you. And yeah, I had horrible PTSD. I started drinking. And at some point, I had to make a decision where this was going to go. And I felt like if I was going to just continue down that road, that the person who did that was going to win.
I see.
But it is a hard spot to be in, like I was pretty beaten up, like physically I was hurting, emotionally I was hurting, and I mean, I'm a very positive, high energy person, even back then I was, but that didn't matter, when you get, like something like that happens to you, I have all the compassion in the world. Like, it's a horrible thing to pick yourself up from that spot. And I don't have any family here. Like, it was, and you kind of isolate yourself, and it's hard.
It took your daughter to tell you something
Right.
that really changed your mind on what to do.
Right.
What did she say? How did that play out?
So after the attack, honestly, I was out of it. I was out of it I didn't even feel pain until, I'm gonna say probably like 15 hours later, when I slept, and then like during the day I slept again. I kind of knocked myself out, and then I was like, okay, you got to get up, you take a shower. And I took my clothes off, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I was shocked how my body was black and blue.
Oh my God.
My foot was broken. Like, I was like, wow, how come I didn't feel this, And then the pain started to set in. But it took me a while to, I don't know, like for my brain to function again.
Wow. Yeah.
Fully. And the next day, which was almost like 2 days later, I took my daughter to a tennis lesson. And she sat next to me in the car, and she said, Mom, so what are you going to do about it? And I said, I don't know. And she asked me, she said, what would you do if that had happened to me? And I said, I would kill the guy.
Yeah.
Because I know as a mother, like somebody touched my daughter like that and beat her up, and I saw my child black and blue, I would, And she's like, no, seriously, what would you do? And I said, oh, okay, seriously? I would go to the police. I would make sure this person pays for what he had done.
Yeah.
And then she looked at me and she said, Mom, why don't you love yourself enough to do that for yourself?
Wow.
And it made me cry. I was like, oh my God, she's so right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have all the love in the world for my children, but for myself, no. So I dropped off at tennis and I went to the police.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started the process, which is a very, very difficult process. The system is so broken. I'm still glad I did it, just because I had to show her that this is not okay.
Yeah.
You don't just walk away from it. You gotta stand up for yourself.
100%.
So, and it was never about like revenge, like, oh, he needs to pay for, like, I never had that feeling. Maybe I should, I don't know. But for me, my priority was always, okay, how can I ever look at my daughter or my son, but I'm more concerned about my daughter because she's a girl. How could I ever look at her and say, oh my God, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you stand up for yourself? Why did you allow this to happen? How could I ever do that if I couldn't stand up for myself?
Yeah, that's true. Wow.
So it kind of, I don't know, it had to be done.
And that's the hard part, is that when you work so hard and you're tough on yourself and everything, it takes someone else's love for you to realize that you've been giving a lot of love and as we should, to give love to your family, to your kids and everything. And then at that point, you don't really have enough love for yourself at that point. Like, you're losing that.
You're tired,
aspect.
honestly.
Yeah.
Especially at that point, I was like, oh my God, I can't deal with this. I cannot deal with this. This is like a mountain of, like, just life throws at you, like, now I have to deal with that.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to be left alone. And that's what I kept thinking. I remember I kept thinking, as long as he doesn't come back, as long as my kids are safe, I will get through this. I will deal with this. I will get through this.
Mm-hmm. That's what you're telling yourself.
Yes.
But at that point, do you ever feel safe again? It's and like you mentioned, the system, the justice system, whatever it is, it's broken. A couple episodes ago on the podcast, I had a lady talk about how she was abused and with domestic violence and all this stuff. And that was one thing she mentioned also, is that when she went to report it, they didn't believe her right away.
They don't.
And that's the hard part, is like, well, then what are they there for? Because I think one thing that they asked her, like, are you sure this happened? Are you sure? Like, do you just want attention? I think they said that to her. And you saying this right now, it's kind of like this pattern that I'm even realizing is deeper than I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, you want to be heard. You want to be understood and things like that. And the problem is, what was it? Like, was it these people not believing in you, or not, like, because of something else, or they're judging us beforehand? How was it facing that kind of that barricade right away, where they didn't believe you? And then how did you break through that? How did you get them to believe you?
There was multiple reasons why this was difficult, and there's a couple I can't really get into.
Got it.
But one of them was that it's your word against the other person's word, which I understand.
Yeah.
But if you walk into a police station and you're black and blue and you have broken bones and you're saying, I need help. You need to help me to feel safe, and you need to take care of this and do whatever. And then for them to say, so how did this happen? Okay, you explain exactly what happened, and then they say, well, prove it. And I said, look at me.
Yeah, you didn't do it to yourself.
Right,
Like,
and then they said, and I said, and my neighbors who actually came to rescue me, they heard me scream for my life, so obviously this is what happened.
Yeah.
And then they would ask you and say, did they actually see him beat you? No, when they came in to the whole scene, he stopped. Like, no, they didn't see, but they heard me, and that's why they came at like 12:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Well, so you have no proof that he actually did that to you. How else would this have happened? Their suggestion was, you have stairs. You could have thrown yourself down the stairs.
Oh, wow.
You hear that, you're like, oh my God, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Almost like you're the crazy one in this world
Yeah.
that you didn't know. Yeah.
So, and that's kind of set the scene for the rest. It took about like a little bit over a year to get through this. And I don't know, it's frustrating. It's so frustrating. And so many times you're like, why am I doing this? Why? And then you have to remind yourself, you're fighting this battle for your child,
Exactly.
for nothing else.
And I really want people to take note of this, that it was difficult and it was hard to even make that decision. The fact that you did and you stuck through it, that's what people need to do. Because there's probably someone listening to this and they're thinking like, oh, it's okay. I don't want to have to deal with that, that mountain, the stress in life. I don't have time for that, whatever. But you're pointing out that there's things in life that you have to fight through. You have to sacrifice more time for, because it's about family. It's about who you are as a person, and not letting that moment define you.
Right.
And I think if you never said anything, it would haunt you. I believe that moment would define you if you didn't stand up for yourself.
Right.
And people need to hear that nowadays.
And I think it would define me as a mother too. Like, how can you say one thing
Yeah.
and do something else?
Like, not have integrity as a parent.
Yes.
They'll always call your bullshit on that.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. They'll usually call you out and be like, well, Mom, Dad, you didn't do it. Why would I?
Yeah.
Right? They watch us. They watch our kids watch us, and they see what we do, and they're literally gonna emulate it. They're gonna copy you.
And I think another big lesson to take away from this is that you think, this can never happen. This will never happen to me.
Yeah.
I don't live a life like that. Like, I don't surround myself with people like that. That's never going to happen to me.
Yeah.
And that's why you're not prepared. But there's a bunch of lessons to take from that, which I've relayed to my daughter.
Of course.
If anything like that ever happened to her, if somebody disrespected her physically in any which way, shape, or form, the mistakes to avoid. Like, I look back and I know so much more now about the system and what would have helped me to make this journey smoother and to have more credibility as a victim, which I didn't know before. But A, you're not prepared because you don't think this will ever happen to you.
Yeah.
And B, when you're in the moment and this is happening, your brain fires differently.
Exactly.
Like, you don't think ahead and say, oh, when I need to fight for this, I need to have proof, witnesses.
Yeah.
You don't think that way.
You don't think those things.
No, you don't think.
Nor can you access that rationality. Like, at this point,
No.
you're focused on safety. So that's why your body shut down and everything, and you didn't want to meddle anywhere else.
Right.
You just wanted to maintain safety.
Yeah.
And that's helpful. I think anybody that hears your story, they realize, knowing that now, you're gonna feel this way. You're gonna feel like you don't need to say anything. You're going to physically feel like you're in a hole. What do you do then? And I think that's what your story shows people.
Right. I was lucky. The place I live in the front of my house, there's commercial space, and there's an F-45, which is high intensity interval training. Mm-hmm. And I thought, check it out. Go in there, see what it does. Maybe I feel better, because I'd heard endorphins and anything. And I started working out there, and I did feel better. I mean, it kicked my ass. I remember the first time I went there, because I wasn't used to working out. I finished the class, and I have 100 steps or 80 steps to go home. I opened my front door. I lay down in my hallway, and I had 911 on speed dial, because I thought I was going to have a heart attack.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, this is going to kill me. But I went back. And then I realized, oh my God, I feel much better, at least for a few hours, Yeah. And then sometimes I went back twice a day. Sometimes I went back 3 times a day.
Wow.
And oh my God, I started to feel better. Like emotionally, I felt better. Physically, I started to feel better. They had a global competition back then for members, and I was like, I'm going to enter that. And I entered it at 35% body fat.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And then because of the pandemic, it got cut short, usually 8 weeks, and it got cut short to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I went from 35% body fat down to 16 in 6 weeks with diet and training.
In 6 weeks?
In 6 weeks. So
Wow,
I ended
that's a
up
lot,
winning female highest percentage body fat loss for that competition.
What was driving you to do this? Was it just like the momentum of feeling better?
Yes. At that point, it was just a feeling of feeling better. Not being in that darkness, in that hole, you know.
Yeah.
And I have to say, at F45, the whole team, the trainers there were amazing. And they pushed me, like lovingly pushed me, because I had told them what happened. They knew. And I said, you gotta let me do my thing. Don't push me too hard, but push me a little bit. Like, just give me a little TLC, you know, and just gently push me. And they did. They did an amazing job. Wow. And I remember when I first started, I had no balance. I got hit on the head so hard. Like, I walked in and, like, there's stuff where you have to, like, jump up on things, and I couldn't do it. I had no balance. So they were there to support me and help me and just get myself back to trusting my body and just feeling better overall.
Yeah.
It's an amazing community, I have to say.
Yeah, people don't credit the body as one of the tools to help your mind emotionally, especially your spirit. You know, whatever like is internal. Mm-hmm. People forget that the body is one of the best channels to tap into the emotions again. Right. Because after a trauma, especially, your body shuts off. It almost cuts a connection between your head and your body, your mind and your body, and people get stuck in their head too much. Yeah. It sounds like you forced your blood to flow back into your body, like your body was all you had at that point, because emotionally you're too drained. People don't credit the body as that big tool anymore. You said like endorphins started flowing, things like that.
And it also, I was like, oh my God, I'm working out that much, and I started to see little results, and I was like, I can't drink anymore. Like, like that would be counterproductive. Yeah. So now I started to get a little ambitious,
Nice.
And
nice.
So I completely stopped drinking and like it's just one little step at a time, without pushing myself too hard, without being judgmental on myself, and like, just being kind to myself and say, come on, like you gotta do this,
Yeah. When was that first class at F45? When was that?
I don't even remember. I think the first class was probably in November or December. The attack happened in September, I think.
Of what year?
2 years ago.
Oh wow. Mm-hmm. Oh wow. So like September 2019, if anything.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So right before the like the pandemic hit and everything. So you've been on this journey since then. Right. You made that transformation. You won, right? You lost the most body fat. I mean, that's super intense. That's a lot of body fat percentage in 6 weeks, if anything. Right. But I think you fought with this fire that I think people can feel from the screen. They can feel it. They can probably hear it through the mic. I think our lives and the current lives that we live are a result of our pasts. Yes. Right? And I see you now as this powerhouse of hunger and fight for these things that we're talking about, for real life. Yeah. And it happens to be fitness, bodybuilding that lights you up now to spread your message, to send that message to people. What has bodybuilding, what has fitness given you now? And to this Sabine in front of me.
So after I lost all this body fat, I was barely 100 pounds.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, and now where are we going to go from here? There's not much left. I can't keep doing this. I'm going to disappear. And so I went to a friend of mine who has a nutrition store, and I said, hey, do you know somebody who can help me put on some muscle, because I'm just skin and bones at this point. And he said, oh yeah, I know somebody. I'll check with him, see if he's interested in working with you. And so he ended up calling Dave Fisher from Powerhouse, here in Torrance, and Dave then called me and said, "Why don't you come in? I'll look at you and see if I can do something with you." And so I went in, and I will never forget that. He looked at me and was like, "Okay, let me see this," like looked at my body, and he said, "Okay, I'll train you, but I'm not going to babysit you."
Oh.
And I looked at him like, I don't need a babysitter. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm quite capable of taking care of myself. Back then, I didn't know what that meant. Now I know. Like,
Nice.
he's not gonna motivate me. Like tell me to come in and make sure I come in every day, and tell me what to eat and all of that. Like, you're gonna do this on your own. I'm here to train you, but I'm not gonna hold your hand. But I didn't know that back then, so I was like, what are you talking about? What?
Yeah.
Wow. So, and then the pandemic happened, and him and everything shut down. He shut down for a while too, but he and I trained every day. We were in a closed gym, and the lights were off, AC was off, and it was like the Rocky movie, I swear to God. I was like checking the streets for police, ran in the back door, and we trained, and it was phenomenal. It was amazing. Wow. And I fell in love with working out, with like really working out, with lifting and with bodybuilding, and I saw my body transform. And you probably saw on Instagram the before and after pictures, like,
100%,
wow, holy. So I love it. I mean, people ask me all the time, they're like, how do you get the discipline to get up at 4:30 every day? I would cry if I couldn't. I would be really upset.
Yeah, because it's part of you now.
Yes.
It is you.
It is it's a lifestyle now. It gives me so much joy. Like this morning I was like, I have 35 minutes. I'm going. I have 35 minutes. I am in there. And I went, and it gives me so much joy. It gives me so much energy. And again, it's something I could give to my kids. My son and I didn't have a very good relationship for a while because I left his dad. Today, we train together. And he told me the other day, he's like, "Mom, I made a vision board." And he's not the vision board kind of guy.
Oh, really?
He's not. And I said, "You made a vision board? Wow, I'm proud of you." And he's like, "And I wanted to tell you, you're on my vision board." And it made me cry because I'm like, oh my God, we've come such a long way. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And to be with him and his friends, be part of their life, and they want to train with me. It's like, wow, I'm not the regular 50-year-old mom where they're like embarrassed to be seen with. No. Yeah. Like, can you come? Can you train with us? So it's amazing. And he's now fallen in love with bodybuilding, and he trains, I want to say 5-6 days a week. He has a coach now. He diets. He's like, wow, nice. So cool.
And that's inspiration he pulled from you.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, you're not the the mom that we're embarrassed of. You're the badass mom that I want to hang out with us.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And he's like, there's people at school who are like, "Your mom's at Powerhouse." And he said, "Yes, she is." And it's like, wow, how many teenagers say that about their mom, or want to say that about their mom. So it's very cool. I'm so happy. I feel like I've come full circle, on a lot of things. Yeah.
Definitely. And I feel like there's so much more that you're going to be capable of, that you are capable of, and it's going to show.
Yeah.
I mean, your posts on Instagram are about this. This is the message that you bring.
Yeah.
Hard lives create strong people, and your past doesn't define you, but it helps define who you want to be, and then who you become is this powerhouse, Sabine Power Life. And
I feel like we always say, "Oh, your past doesn't define you," but I think it does.
Definitely.
Like in an amazing way. I feel like the harder it's been, the more transformational it has been.
Yeah.
And that's like, when you see the silver lining of something really terrible, then you're like, okay, I'm on the right path. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Like, that's like Phoenix rising from the ashes. I'm coming back.
Yeah. You mentioned something in one of the previous videos you posted. It was like something about the darkness, that's where you find something.
Yes.
And I don't think you can see a silver lining if you're in a bright light.
No, you don't.
You see it in the darkness first.
Yes.
That dark. If someone's in that dark path right now, or they're in a dark hole, what would you tell them? What would be your message to them?
See, I keep talking about bodybuilding
Yeah.
because that's what did it for me.
Yeah.
In this case, in this instant. But when I look back on all the things I've experienced, there was always something that gave me that joy. You know, and for other people, it's not going to be bodybuilding, but it's going to be, as long as you can keep your heart open, despite what's going on, just like, you can keep your heart open to see that what lifts you up, you're going to be okay.
Wow.
And because if you can focus on that, the rest is going to be okay. It always is. It's an ebb and flow of good and bad, and we all go through it. I'm not that special. There's a ton of people everybody goes through crap.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
Yep.
But it's how you deal with it. And if you can keep your eye on the ball of the joy, you're going to go through it and you're going to come out better in the end.
Wow, yeah.
So for some people, it might be painting or, I don't know, running. Mm-hmm. You run your heart out. I've done that in the past. I would just run for miles and miles. I don't know. Everybody has their own thing, right?
Yeah.
Like for you, it's this. It makes you happy. Look at you, like you're like
so.
glowing, shining. You know.
I love talking to people about life.
Yeah.
And you're right. This is the exact story of the broken instruments. It's we're all broken somehow by this world. Yeah. We're not perfect. We're imperfect people. We're flawed, but we're able to take what we have left and still make noise.
It's like the Japanese. What is it saying? Or like I always think of that, the broken pottery that is more valuable and bigger when it's put back together than the original perfect shaped one, right?
That's exactly
because
it.
they put it back together with gold. And that's what we do, right?
That's
like when
who
we
we are.
break, if we can find, and I keep calling it the joy, like the gold, the joy, and we can put ourselves back together, our hearts are going to be bigger. They're going to love harder. They're going to enjoy life more because we've seen that darkness.
Wow, very true, very true. It's the human body is that. When you break your bone, it heals stronger than before. And I think there's so much metaphor in nature that proves that. Mm-hmm. And I think, that's why I was grateful that you're able to be on the Broken Instruments podcast. I think this is one little talk of many talks that you're going to have to inspire people to find that joy.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to have a 3-letter word have so much meaning behind it.
And it sounds cliche at first. It's like
does,
joy. There's so many coffee mugs with like joy, But I think it's like once you feel it, you really feel it in your heart, then you know what that joy is for you.
True joy.
Yeah. And then even in the darkest moments, when you look at your child smiling at you and laughing at you, you're like, oh, it puts a smile on your face and you're like, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
We can do anything.
Wow, yeah.
And that's when you really, really feel it. And it's not just on a coffee mug, but you feel it like in your heart, in your bones.
Yeah.
Then you're good.
Wow. I really appreciate you being on the Broken Instruments podcast, Sabine.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
This flew by real quick.
We're done? Oh, no.
Seriously. Coming all the way out here, anticipating what this conversation was going to be like, I throw around a lot of things in my head. I told myself, I know enough about her story and I see who she is now. Let's connect the dots from, their past to who they are now. And honestly, you're right. We throw on words like joy and whatever, like even God. It's like it's oversaturated already. People dilute the meaning of that.
Yeah.
But that 3-letter word means so much to one person, it changed their whole life.
Yeah.
And we really have to give value to those moments, to those words in our life, because it carries the energy.
Yeah.
You know, joy for somebody sounds so cliche. It's on every mug in Christmas time, right?
Right.
Like you see it at the store. But in reality, joy saved your life.
Yeah, it did. And it might be a different word for somebody else, but as long as you feel it, it's gonna do its miracle. It's gonna
right.
transform your life.
You're right. And joy in your life is family. It's bodybuilding. It's fitness. Joy in someone else's life can be something totally different.
Of course, yeah.
But we are all powerful people, man.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Oh man, this has been a pleasure to meet you, Sabine. Finally in
Thank
person.
you.
I know we've been messaging through
Yes.
Instagram and stuff. I really want to highlight where people can find you. They can follow you, hear more about your story. Where do they look for it?
So it's shinylittlblessings.com, and then it will take you to our Etsy store too, to see what these pieces are, these meaningful pieces. And they're an inspiration, you know, to create whatever it is that brings you that joy or is meaningful to you. So people look at it and they write to me and they're like, oh, I saw this, but this is what's going on in my life. How can you translate that for me? And that's what we do. And then we're on Instagram at Shiny Little Blessings and at Sabine_Powerlife. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's good. Thank you so much, Sabine.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was a joy.
Always.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.